Loading. All right, so here we are. Welcome to our second live streaming on YouTube. My name is Sezen Tongus. I'm the coordinator of Moving Reunion Network. And today we'll be talking about two different artist initiatives from Sweden and Portugal with Tingskog and Catarina Vieira. Welcome, Catarina and Gri, and thank you for accepting this invitation. Let me briefly talk about Moving Reunion Network and about our guests today. Moving Reunion is an informal artist network based in Lisbon. We are artists who mainly are working within performative means in an interdisciplinary approach. Since 2016, we organized two Biennial Performative Arts Meeting. The third one is happening at the moment actually in Lisbon and virtually. We also organized 5 thematic artist residencies in Lisbon, Istanbul, Ghent, Cordoba, and Faro. We edited a book on 10 years of a contemporary dance education program of Forum Dança, from where actually the reunion has started. So since this first meeting in 2016, we always had a series of talks in which we reflect on different aspects of artist initiatives. And this year we have 3 sessions planned. You can watch the first one here on our YouTube channel. It's in Portuguese. This one will be the second one, and we have a third one that we are rescheduling now for a future date. So today we have Tingskog and Catarina Vieira with us, who will talk about initiatives that they are involved in and that they have started. I'll give the first word to Catarina, who is a theater maker and a performer based in Lisbon. And she's going to talk about her Matéria, which is an artistic project where she invites friends and peers to share work and know more about their practice. I leave it to you, Catarina.
Hello, I'm Catarina, and I have this project, Matéria, that I initiated in January 2019, out of a desire of being together, of encountering really my friends with whom I share some artistic or professional intimacy, in order to know what are they doing, and also to create a space in Lisbon that I think that is not so frequent, which is a space of sharing artistic practices. And so how I designed these encounters or this space Matéria was that there would be an encounter every month with a different artist for 4 hours, where for 2 hours I would share my artistic practice, and the other 2 hours the other artist would share what they would be doing by the time, or the practices that they are always working on, or a research question that is still open and they want to dig in and share with someone. And my idea would be that this space of sharing would be really in practical manners. So not just about talking about work, but also embodying the questions. So the format itself is a format of a workshop where people are welcome to come and they can participate. So the idea is really that to create a space where through artistic practices, mostly based on movement, we would encounter. So it's also it's also to reflect what does it mean to create a space of encounter within the performative art field, because I felt this lack, and not only the lack of a space of experimentation where we can really be together, investigating without having a contractual bond like I work for you or we are working together. So we can be investigate, or we are not studying in the academy. So we are outside the academia and we are investigating together in a very light and also not non-pretentious way, in the sense of we don't need to arrive to any place. It's really what can we do within this time frame of 4 hours. So the main vectors would be like sharing, encounter, and also experimentation. And my invitation for each artist that came to Matéria was really to try things that they never tried, or for example, practices that usually are kept outside of a creation process. At least my experience here in Lisbon is that the creative process is very condensed into 2 months. So frequently experimentation is kept outside of the, it's kept outside. We very frequently we cannot lose time investigating practices that lead to nowhere. And so this project is also responding to this imperative of being efficient. So to think sustainability of artistic processes and questioning how much time do we invest in things that don't lead to an object, but leads to something different like encountering or questioning. So it lasted from January 2019 till July 2020. It was 15 encounters. This first edition was 15 encounters, and now I made a pause to reflect. I have the desire to keep on developing this project in a different way, but for the moment it was important to make a pause and to make like to go into a reflection process of thinking what worked, what didn't work, how can it grow from here further. And another important thing that I would like to say is that the encounters are free. And this was very important for me since the beginning, is that whoever would want to join the workshop shouldn't pay anything. Also because the project is responding to another need I mapped in Lisbon, which is the places where we can practice or keep our tools. How do you say? I don't have the translation in English, but you know, when you are fit, you keep fit in terms of what are your artistic tools when you are unemployed. And frequently we are unemployed or without working for a long time. So how could I create a space that has regular encounters where I can go there and think and use my artistic skills to dig around the question or a theme with someone else. And also, so there is this also this important outcome, which is networking. And so in the end, people meet each other and meet people with whom they would never work, and maybe with people they will never work, but they had this moment of sharing. And so it's a totally free encounter. And the another important thing is that it's also open for non-professionals. And so it's aimed at the artistic field, so people who work in the area, but also to mix with audiences that are not from the artistic field. And my idea was really for these kind of audiences was to think, how can someone meet an artist that they know from seeing on stage? how can they encounter this artist embodying the questions is working in and implicating the body in this encounter, and I'm very happy that this worked. So very often the audience that would come to Matéria was a mixed audience from people from the field, people that are working, people that are unemployed, and also audiences that have different jobs. They work in biology, in psychology, whatever, and they would come and they would participate and fully engage. Just to finish, just to say that this project also has a ramification, a derivation, which is a podcast that actually it's a way of documenting it, but not directly. So it's not a register from the encounter itself. So it's a second encounter that I would make with every artist I was meeting. For 10 minutes, I would ask her 2 questions, and she would ask me back 2 questions. And I can show you the page on Mixcloud, where you can see all the podcasts, all the talks I had with the artists I met. And it was interesting because we reflected on practices, but also on the themes they would be working at the moment. Also, why we came together, why do we know each other? And this was also something very important to me, was that there should be a kind of an intimacy between me and my guest. So there should be a personal bond somehow in the curation of the guests that are coming. So I selected people with whom I worked, but I know nothing about their own artistic processes. I selected people that are my friends, but they're also artists, but I don't know also what they are doing, or people that I met in workshops and I want to know more, or I want other people to know more about their work. And so my body would be like the common denominator to categorize somehow this choice that I make of who to invite. And that's it. I think I somehow introduced a little bit of everything, and maybe afterwards, if you have questions, you can ask.
I just want to maybe ask you
Yes.
if you want to, or just kind of propose if you want to share the names of the artists that you invited until now.
Yeah.
And I like this aspect that you bring out, like about curiosity of, meeting the artists' practice, like through their practice, let's say, is something that I would like maybe ask you to elaborate a little bit more if you want. And I'm also curious to know a bit more about the questions, like maybe some of the questions that you put to the artists, or that you received, that was a revelation for you at the end somehow.
Let's see if I can remember. So the artists were David Marques, Mariana Tegner Barros, Serena Ramovecki. For example, she's not an artist, but she's a Feldenkrais practitioner with whom I work for 5 years. So it made sense for me to bring her in because it's an important practice in my own practice. Then Carlota Lagido, Fernando Eugênio, Vânia Rovisco, Erin Hill and Sara Anjo, Tiago Vieira, Sofia Dinger, Flora Detraz, Dani de Emília, Vera Mantero, Raquel André, Tiago Cadete e Miguel Bonneville. What were the second question you asked me, Susan?
About this part that you put questions to each other.
But you said something before that. Yeah, I don't remember.
I was talking about this curiosity aspect, if you want to
elaborate
a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So this idea of is like, I invite you to come to my studio, and this is not something that happens very frequently when you are rehearsing, at least here in Lisbon. And I always felt that the creative processes are frequently very lonely, especially if you work solo, or if you tend to accumulate a lot of roles because you don't have a big budget. So you cannot have a lot of people, or you cannot have frequently an external eye to come and see. So, and I was always curious to this idea of, I don't need to have a deep and long-term bond with you to go and see what you are doing, in the sense of maybe I can just go and see what you are doing out of curiosity, because I believe that when you meet someone else or someone else's practices, it's not that you are going from now on, you are starting to do as that artist does, but the difference or the contrast, meeting someone that is articulating, thinking and practicing in a different way from you, at least for me, it helps me to sharpen what are my specific interests and my specific methodologies, and the way I propose something to an audience or to a group of participants. So for me, this is the richness of this curiosity, is really to understand, out of a theme that can be written, that I read in the program of a theater, how does that artist articulate verbally, but also how does it shape and create a practice that is related to that theme that is like obsessing, or the questions that is trying to research. And it's so rich the way you can actually manifest and materialize a question, but also manifest it not as a finished object, but also as a place of encounter and of research and investigation. That really, for me, Matéria could continue to go on, because I'm still curious to see, it's endless to see how this encounter can be shaped by the questions, the artistic questions that we are working on. And about the questions that the artists asked me, or that I asked, is interesting, because frequently they would ask about the name Matéria and the story behind this name, and frequently also about my artistic interest in practices, in this idea of working from a practice, or what does it mean, a practice, or the difference between practice and an object that is to be presented and seen by an audience. What is this place of encounter that is very fragile and very unstable there? Yeah, I would say that.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Maybe we have more discussion about this and other questions at the end, after Gri also talks about in Sister Space, right? So Gri is an artist working with choreography, but together with dance, sculpture, painting, and text. She's one of the co-initiators and board member of In Sister Space, and she's going to talk about In Sister Space today.
Yes, my name is Gry, and I will talk about In Sister Space, which is artist-driven organization and platform that was founded in 2017, based in Stockholm, but also somehow leaking a little bit out of there. And it really started from a need to think about how to organize artistic practice differently, where we came together thinking about, okay, how do we also create the circumstances and the context in which we want to be active in, and also somehow how do we segment the field in a way that we feel that inside this thing we can set some terms together and decide how we want to meet and work next to each other. Because the thing within Sister Space, it's a members organization today consisting of around 50 members. And the idea is that it is a platform that brings artists together across projects, and also like bigger, like with the aim of creating a platform that is bigger than somehow the people that we meet in various artistic projects, and yeah, somehow a bit outside of this algorithm. Yeah, and we arrange different kinds of activities. Some of them aim at sharing practices in the studio. We also had series, now during Corona, it's been a bit not happening, but before also like, we call it at issue practicing. So we meet in the studio, and it's somehow aiming to replace the morning class apparatus with thinking about it more as a study circle in practice, where we take turns of sharing different ideas and practices that we somehow put at issue together, and then we collectively dive into them, and somehow that it's a collective development of knowledge rather than somehow a teacher and a student somehow. So to stir up this kind of situation in which we also encounter each other's work. And then we've also had, we call it Office, which is the H has different, could stand for different things, but one thing it stands for is, was initially home office, where we would meet in a person's home and do administrative work together. And for Sister Space, it's been a big part to address also this reproductive and administrative work with as much criticality and care as the artistic practices and proposals. And Office would then have a kind of a score. So we came together, one person was hosting it, making a soup or something, and we had the day, and everyone would like say what they had to get done, and then we would also help each other. And this format has changed, because in the first 2 years, In Sister Space was more of a parasite organization that didn't have its own physical space, but was hosted by various organizations and institutions. But then we also worked with, like that we invited each other to our homes and worked there. And yeah, so since 2019, we also have a base that is like a physical base in Hayden in Östberga in Stockholm. And there we also arrange Office, and then it's the same principle. One big thing has been to find ways to leave traces. And when it comes to thinking about the administrative part of working, how to also help each other and meet in this work rather than like everyone sitting isolated alone and doing kind of the same things. So we would rather come together and meet the deadline together somehow. And then sharing this information and strategies and knowledge has been very important, and a way of open sourcing kind of our knowledge and strategies. I will now share, this is our webpage in Sister Space, and one way of doing this is what we call a choreographer's handbook, the prequel. For all the work necessary before or during creative processes, an open source of information and experiences on dry things as budgets, contracts, funding, venues, inspirational texts, invoicing. Take, copy, add, comment as you like. This is a shared office library. And the prequel is exists on Google Drive, where you can then take, there's like a lot of different things. There's examples of applications, budgets, venues, festivals, somehow like this. And also it exists as a Facebook group where people also share open calls or stuff like this, or reach out saying, I'm sitting with this deadline. Is anyone else also doing it? Let's meet up and do it together. Yeah, this is like one of the things that we do, that is thinking about the relationship between the administrative and artistic work, and how we want to somehow meet this administrative work also with the same kind of care that we address practices with, and also to think about this as a practice. And as Office is one of these scores that we have for how to gather around something specific, we also have different other activities that we arrange. And we regularly have members meetings where we also meet and we can discuss, usually like we discuss something specific that we need to talk about or want to talk about, and we eat dinner together and also having a social time. We also have this at issue morning classes or studio sharing sessions. And we've also arranged residencies where the members can join, and then we also have this kind of practice sharing more intensely under a week or something. And also we have also arranged festivals for the members' work, and yeah, like this. And I think also one thing, yeah, there's also a little archive here. It's a bit fragmented because, yeah, but there's an archive. Another thing that we've been doing that is now also a little bit being rethought is to have an everything calendar that gathers also a lot of information on like deadlines, events, shows, like everything somehow that happens, and then that is also open source in the sense that you can add information, and then that there would be like this one place where you can go to look for information rather than spending a lot of time looking for it. Yeah, and today the organization consists of approximately 50 members with an elected board, and also a lot of different working groups that somehow focuses on different things, parts of the organization's work. And also that the idea is that members also propose working groups or activities or events that they think we should do. And I think like one common denominator is really this desire to try to work in a different way, to counter competition in the field with finding ways of working together and sharing information and our practices with each other, where also the togetherness isn't based on somehow taste or agreement, but friction and this like desire to also insist on being close to each other, even like also with this friction. That is a good thing. Yeah. And then also on our webpage, our members can also have their own webpage so that you're also part of this context. Yeah, I think this is like the first brief introduction also about In Sister Space. Yeah, maybe you also have questions.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's quite generous actually in this transparency that you are bringing with all these shared documents and this thing of like competing, let's say, for the same fund, but doing the application together is something that you maybe don't see often. And in that sense, yeah, it's kind of impressive to think in a way that togetherness of, so in a way, a solidarity that's being created in this community. And like, I'm a part of this Facebook group you talked about, and like when you talked about this, you said that it's not like geographically limited, so it's open to everyone who's interested and that can have access to those information and also share information, etc. So I find it courageous also in a way. Like, I'm curious to know how you manage all this, the interaction in between, or like yeah, if you kind of experienced some difficulties in terms of like communication, and how do you manage that? I mean, also being part of an informal network that's kind of willing to do like similar actions, let's say. I have these questions. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is a lot of work. And I think that it is, that the aim has always been to somehow minimize this work by leaving all these traces, so that somehow that next time it will be a bit less when it comes to somehow this administrative part. And then of course it is like a lot of work to kind of keep this whole organization working and healthy and sustainable. And I think we've experienced also like a lot of ups and downs. Now we've been going for 4 years, and I think somehow with time something also starts to kind of there is some kind of continuity that somehow is born and helps drive it. But it is also very voluntary based. Like no one is paid. It's you, if, as a member, you pay a voluntary fee that is like ish 20 euros. So it's also based on somehow, it's based on desire and will somehow. And this always brings also friction, because we also need to work to pay our bills. So there it is, and also as the organization started as very small and had such a clear aim to expand. So also how to like keep making it grow and do that in an inclusive and good way, so that it also expands outside of our own personal networks, has been also a lot of work, and something that we are very interested in finding strategies for continuously. I think also, so it is of course a lot of work. Like how do you keep like a board that works a lot, and then like all the members, and having this communication going is also something we've also tried different strategies for throughout the years. And I think having physical space has, like in ways, also makes these things easier, that you can also meet. But then, you can meet somewhere concretely.
And do you want to talk a little about the choice of the name, this sisterhood? Maybe you can give a little bit more emphasis on that.
Yeah, so the name came also in 2017, and it's a mashup of like insisting. So to really like, we want to insist on these specific parameters and ways of working and coming together, and sisterhood in the sense of working, but like being in proximity, disagreement, friction, that we want to like put into sisterhood and solidarity. Important. So it's like a mix of this and these two words, and then together with making space for this.
Cool. Maybe we can open now for questions. If you have also questions to each other, I have a couple of questions. I can start with one maybe, which would be like a little related to these issues that you were talking about, about the administrative part of it, because you, as artists, also to manage all this structure, take a lot of roles at the same time, being the artist, the programmer, the producer, the technician, etc., in different contexts. So my question is like, how do you manage, and what kind of strategies do you have for yourself and or for this structure you have to create an equilibrium in between artistic creation and production labor? how do you also create maybe a frontier in between? Yeah. I don't know who wants to go first. Yeah.
I can go. I would say that frequently I'm in this position of assuming all these roles, and in Matéria I do the production, I do the curation, I do the communication, and then I have my own artistic practice that I'm sharing there. So it's a lot of roles. And in the past maybe 10 years, I was really questioning how to create strategies. And one of the strategies is only one project in my hands at a time, not to have two or more. This might mean that the project is less ambitious than what I'm thinking it could be. So, so I will do that in this sense. If I'm doing everything and my body has a limitation of energy, maybe the amount of work I will do dedicate, it's proportional also to what is the budget, but also what is the really the physical, energetic needs of my body. So what I started doing, the strategy is to be less ambitious and to work really proportionally. So if my budget is this small, so I won't do encounters every week. I will do an encounter per month, for example. I don't have capacity to document, film, and photograph, so I will do a talk of 10 minutes. This kind of, my strategy is really to think about body energy and translating it into time and investment, and this is one of the strategies. Yeah, and then paying maybe my bills with other works, but where this compromise is less delicate. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think I also try different strategies in different periods. I think one way is really like, for me, my like this, like, yeah, for me in Sister Space really gives also this kind of collective context where there is a flow of help and support. And I think it taught me a lot of like also to ask for help and like, let's do it together and figure it out, and to be less independent, which I think is for me really helpful. And then yeah, I think also trying to budget my energy in this sense, like what's possible and what's reasonable, and also I think I a bit somewhere also have this like, no, I want to do art that is fun and that gives me something, and I also then finance my life with work elsewhere also. So yeah, to keep it as a thing that actually gives me something more than, yeah, something more.
Yeah, this thing of asking for help is sometimes, as myself, I mean, from my experience, I realized looking back, I had this difficulty for some reason. I don't know if it's has to do with some certain assumptions I made about like success, maybe, and but this structure of like a collective structure that help each other makes a project for sure like more strong. So that's what I'm also learning every day, new things, of course, and it's important to be able to delegate and be clear about what I need as a part of this collective and what I can give. So it's also like a lot of about that part, I guess. Can I go maybe to the next question I have? So I'm curious about, maybe this is like a very broad question, like how do you yourself and in the structure that you are working in, position yourself in this more artistic ecosystem, considering the national and international cultural politics? Big question. Boom. This can be like very practical things in terms of, like you were talking about, like grants, asking for grants, and how does it work for you? Well, how do you position yourself, like when writing grants? That can also be already a starting point. Yeah. If to give an example from my experience with Reunion, as it is like an international network of artists from different countries. It's more, but we are based in Lisbon. So I feel obliged almost to have a kind of this thing of like international mobility discourse all the time, the exchange. And I sometimes feel stuck in that, like when I'm thinking of a project within Moving Reunion. And I'm like trying to find ways to how to actually think also more local. And now there is this different layer of also being able to organize things online, which can make a different impact locally, but still keeping it the project international. And of course, we are in Portugal. The cultural politics in Portugal affect me, but at the same time, most of the people who are part of this network is in Europe. There are some in Latin America, others like remotely in other places living or are from. And it's always this adaptation moment of to national politics to be able to actually get funding for travels again, like if we talk about international mobility. And I'm questioning now in the COVID times if we need to be mobile all the time and how can we work through the existent the politics that's very heavy, and it's not easy to change all these questions, which is I got a little dispersed, but I'll just let you reflect on it maybe a little bit from your point of view.
Somehow, when I initiated Matéria, I was coming back from living in Amsterdam, where I was based for 2 years doing a master. And I knew that I wanted to be, that if I choose Lisbon, I will be working locally with the conditions there. And this was a very conscious choice. And I knew that I was coming back, and I knew to what I was coming back. So I was aware of the national politics or the lack of cultural politics. But one of my research questions was exactly this: how can I initiate this kind of a project in this context? With which funding? Will it be self-managed? In fact, the 2 first editions of Matéria were self-managed. The participants would pay. And then I got an application, a fund from an application that was really looking for projects that have this experimentational profile, and Matéria won, and I was financed through that. But somehow in the past 2 years, I've been also for my artistic other projects that I've been developing was really how to work really locally but really locally. And if I'm going abroad or if I'm going out, then it's not me trying to send all the applications to all the list of applications that are going on right now, but through like a personal relationship somehow, either to the city to which I'm applying, or there has to be a reason, a very concrete reason for me to apply. I know that this is not very specific, but at least for me, it needs to. Otherwise, I feel it's like dispersing resources and energy with this idea that we have to be mobile all the time. And I'm questioning, do we? If we insist on staying in one place, what does it happen? And this is still my question. I haven't I haven't reached the bottom with this question. And so, for example, for my next creation, I had this question because I have 2 residencies that are in Portugal. An application come to go abroad, and I had to initiate contacts with venues that I don't know. And I decided to stay here, actually, and really not to thinking also sustainability, of ecological sustainability. Maybe this is too radical, but for the moment, my choice is working with the conditions within the context where I'm placed, physically placed. I know that then virtually, with all the Zoom and everything, this gets more complex, but thinking from where my body is situated in time and space, what can I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think also like answering a little bit for in Sister Space, also decided to be like locally based in Stockholm, and then also to have these online platforms where it would be bigger somehow, that are the like open source libraries and Facebook groups and stuff like this, to also somehow have the two, but also to like care for this like the physical meeting and proximity, and then it's also somehow it also leaks because members also move around, and then I don't know, I think this movement is very interesting to follow also. And like answering for myself, I think I'm also very like confused place with this, because I also study in Germany, so I'm also based in between Germany and Sweden, and it's very, I don't know, so I'm also trying to like figure this out a lot in all different scales, and I think it's very tricky, and I think that it's a lot actually more like in between rather than both places, and this is it unfolds a lot of different things to deal with.
The nationality issue, or this kind of labels, let's say, just you saying you are in between. I am also in that situation. I'm between Turkey and Portugal, and it's a different way of seeing things, but I really find courageous, Catarina, that you did this choice of like, resisting and staying here. It's very somehow courageous, because in a way that, especially from looking from Turkey, the artists in Turkey, I would say it's very common that people will not, because there is no support, like governmental support, and mostly who are working in the contemporary arts in general would actually maybe sustain their living with more like international touring and etc. So And there are, of course, companies or artists that also resist and like really work hard to be able to have a scene in Turkey, especially like more experimental performative arts medium. And I find it's very courageous in like, I mean, if it's very limited and difficult conditions, because again, if you compare south of Europe to north of Europe, it's very different, starting from the culture, and culture in the sense like also as like individuals, what kind of a culture we have as like a work ethics and understanding of how to work in this art community, let's say. My next question is like really about these communities we are involved in. Like there are maybe small bubbles and we are involved in many. And I'm curious, like what kind of complicities that make you motivate you in a way to invest in what you are doing, to continue creating and also organizing, curating, producing work. Can you name and maybe like explain a little about this feeling of more this complicity, more like from an affective place, maybe like relations, and we talked also about the network, which because for me the reason I do this question is it's very present, right? It's like that's something that is very important to continue working, and it feeds me as an arts professional. And I'm curious to know what is the situation for you.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting. Yeah, for me, it's really this. There's like the layers of. Yeah, I don't know, like these people that I can think with and talk with and practice with. Like it's really this. I don't like. I'm somehow. My thoughts listening to your question is also this like I don't know where like the circle begins, because I think the reason is the context somehow, or this community feeling that somehow makes anything make sense to me somehow. Like I think Corona made this very, very clear. This like isolation. I'm like, there's no there's no inspiration, there is no meaning to like, for me, like I don't know, I'm very struggling to kind of continue with the threads that were there before somehow. So I think this presence of like being inside of the like the community is everything.
Yeah, somehow the aim of Matéria to initiate this project was to start creating these complicities, or to start creating a network here, also coming back from Amsterdam, but also because before I didn't feel this network was there. So maybe like giving a first step, so that now other possibilities of creating collective encounters or networks or ways of working together are possible. And I really feel it was like a first step to tune in to the community and see, okay, we created something together, even if it was a one-on-one encounter with other people, or a 10-on-10 encounter. Something was created, and my question now is really what to do with this that was created, and what is the next step, if it's just a replica of the same logic, or if instead it's to use this complicity to then engage in something more like a collective of collective action or collective space, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I have also like a question. Like, was it a lot the same people that would attend the?
Somehow, in the end, yes. I would say that half of the audience would be around 15 people that could attend, because the space was frequently small, but half of the audience was always people that already came before. So actually, in the last session, it was just people that always came to Matéria, and that was also very, very nice to see this and to know that maybe these people will be the guest artists maybe on a second edition of Matéria. So they are not only just participants, but maybe they can also contribute to facilitate one of the encounters. This is one of the ideas I had.
Yeah, that's like we almost created a small community, and I think what brings it, maybe makes it stronger also, that the regularity that you propose, like there's always, you know, every month for some months there was this meeting in between people. And another thing that I am maybe learning and sometimes still struggling about the patience part of, you know, our I mean, in general, maybe in terms of like creating those bonds in between the networks I am functioning in. Sometimes this lack of regularity of meeting, yeah, is a lack I feel. And then every time there is a project going on with a regular meeting where people are, you know, starting to be able to understand each other's language and creating their own maybe language itself in this group, then it starts to really gain some volume and power. That's what I'm also learning.
Yes, somehow when I created Matéria, one of the questions was really regularity of encounter.
Yeah.
Was really, I don't want to work on production for 8 months and then just meet the people in the studio for 2. I want to, every month I know that I have to have an encounter
Exactly.
and see what happens. Yeah.
Do you have any other question that you want to talk about? I don't know if you want to ask to each other.
I wanted actually to ask Gri, how do you arrive to the collective? And I will explain a little bit my question, because for me it's not obvious in the Western societies or we live, or at least in Portugal, the collective spaces or working collectively is not obvious, especially if I was born in the 80s. It's not something that is obvious. So my question comes from, what was your previous experience working collective? How this specific group of In-Sister Space had this idea, or out of what desire, what kind of discussions gave birth to this space?
Yeah, it's a good question. We were studying together and had this like, yeah, during, was it the last year, maybe like it accelerated somehow, like a discussion on how to kind of keep this like how to create this continuity of of like a context where you can somehow think inside, be together, have the support, take risks in a like way that is safe and sustainable somehow, like that you don't risk everything, but you play with risk in a way that you want to somehow. And also like we had, we started, we had the field, we were studying in Stockholm, and we had field studies, meaning that we were supposed to like visit professional artists in the field and but it was also like right after Christmas, and a lot of people were like, yes, that would be great, but I'm not working so much at this period. And then a few of us thought that maybe this is the time where we really start this. And I think it was quite key that we started while still somehow in the education, because then we had this space that we still had like a common framework and common time that we could invest in doing this initial push. Because otherwise I think like a lot of really like, yeah, otherwise I think it would have required a lot more effort for us to come together in order to like actually establish it. So we found this little gap where we could yeah, articulate it in a way that it could somehow project further. And also, and this is like going back to also the questions before, like so it's in one way like it started with like we all knew each other, and it started with yeah, in a quite narrow group. But then the idea was like, but we don't want it to be a collective, in the sense that we will like work under this collective and produce things together. We want this to be a platform on various levels, and we want it to expand, and we want everyone to want to be a part, to be able to join it, and so we made it into a members organization. And then we tried to like stir it away a bit from us, and this is one of the things that is hard to do. Yeah, I also have a question to you, because yeah, you spoke a bit about it also, but I was wondering, like, how was your own artistic practice also informed by the encounter with the person, like the invited artists that were sharing their practices, but also like from every month also sharing your own practice?
Yeah, this was really a challenge somehow, of every month having to look into the practice, a practice that actually, if you don't have a studio, how can this practice develop? And if this practice only happens once per month, what is its body? So somehow it was interesting, because I would for every encounter I would feel what were the needs, what was the need I would like to explore this month, and really allow myself to change from month to month. And after 6 months, it started to emerge, because I didn't want to create anything new. I wanted to have an in-between. I was imagining I need 1 year before I create a new piece. So the practices were really about being together and to embody encounters through artistic practices. But after 6 months, then some themes emerged, and out of these encounters of Matéria, and now I'm creating a new piece where the material emerged somehow in these encounters. For example, I was working very much with voice and relationship between voice and body, and now I will be working on a new piece that is working with these practices or from these practices. And it was very interesting, because it was the fact that I was able to experiment with a collective of people every month that allowed me to understand, yes, this is exactly where I want to go, and I will be working with a collective in this new piece. So somehow I allowed the artistic research to emerge. I didn't have exactly something very specific. I was sharing practices in the beginning that I really liked doing or coming back to them. And then it's like every month I would feel, where am I? What do I have to say? What do I want to say? Do I want to say anything? Some months I was really lost. I was really like, oh my God, I have nothing to share this month. What do I do? And then something come up. And this is also nice, having like this premiere date that is not a premiere, it's a workshop. And you have to figure out what is the theme or the things that you are sharing. Yeah.
Cool. Maybe if you don't have any other questions, that was lovely to talk to you, to hear more about your projects and yeah, how have you been developing yourself as individual artists in these structures, and also, you know, also placing yourselves in the community. Thank you again for accepting this invitation. And keep in touch.
Yes, and
Yeah.
good luck for the
Thank you.
reunion
Thank you.
and all the events that are coming.
Yeah. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye. Ciao.